The desert night shimmered with heat even though the sun had long dipped behind the dunes. A full moon hung over the horizon, turning the sand into a sea of pale silver. The world was silent, too silent, except for the faint hiss of radios and the muffled sound of boots sinking into the grit. Commander Blake Mercer, leader of SEAL Team 9, crouched behind a ridge of rock, scanning the compound below through his night vision goggles. The green-lit view showed little movement, just a few rusted trucks, some empty cages, and a faint glow of firelight from inside the largest structure. Intel had called this an extraction mission, but every fiber in Blake's body screamed that something was off. The air felt charged, like the world was holding its breath. "Bravo 2, eyes on the East Tower," he whispered. "Copy that," came Mendoza's low reply. "2 tangos, both armed, no movement." "Good. Bravo 3, perimeter clear, sir," Harris answered. "No visual on target yet." Blake's jaw tightened. Somewhere inside that compound, the man known as Ghost Falcon was waiting, a warlord responsible for countless civilian deaths, a phantom who'd evaded capture for years. Tonight, that ended. "All right," Blake murmured into his mic. "On my mark, we go in quiet. No noise, no light. Just shadows." He raised his hand, signaled the countdown, 3, 2, 1, and the SEALs flowed forward like liquid death. They moved in perfect synchronization, each man an extension of the other. Silencers hissed softly. The first 2 guards dropped without a sound. Within moments, the team breached the gate, sweeping corners and clearing rooms. But the deeper they went, the stranger it got. No soldiers, no movement, no evidence of life, except for the faint flickering light coming from the center of the compound. "Something's wrong," Mendoza whispered. Blake gave a sharp nod. "Agreed. Proceed with caution." They advanced through a narrow corridor that opened into a large courtyard. In the center burned a single oil drum, flames licking upward, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Around it lay half-buried crates and the shattered remains of weapons. And then, a sound. A slow, rhythmic tapping. Blake motioned for silence and gestured toward the far door. The team stacked up, Harris breaching first. The door splintered open. What they found made every man freeze. The room wasn't an armory. It wasn't a prison. It was a trap. Inside, a dozen bodies, Ghost Falcon's men, lay dead in a circle, each one shot clean through the head. Their weapons were still clutched in stiff hands. Blood had dried into dark, rust-colored stains on the floor. And written across the far wall, in crude red paint, were the words, "You're too late, Holy," Mendoza whispered, voice trembling for the first time Blake had ever heard. Blake's heart pounded. This wasn't Ghost Falcon's style. He was brutal, yes, but not theatrical. Not like this. He turned to his comms. "Command, this is Bravo Leader. We've got multiple dead, all hostiles. No sign of HVT. Possible ambush. Request drone eyes, over." Static crackled. No response. Then the static deepened into a low, unnatural hum. "Sir," Harris muttered, "we've lost satellite feed." Blake felt the hair rise on his neck. The desert outside had gone completely still. Even the wind had died. And then, from the direction of the dunes, came the sound of engines. "Contact," Mendoza shouted. Gunfire exploded from beyond the compound walls. Bullets sparked against stone as the SEALs dove for cover. "North wall, suppressive fire." Blake barked. The SEALs opened up in tight, controlled bursts, sending muzzle flashes cutting through the darkness. The enemy, dozens, maybe more, returned fire from hidden ridges. Their tracers slicing the night sky. Where the hell did they come from? Harris yelled over the roar. "Doesn't matter," Blake snapped. "We hold until evac." But something in the pattern of the attack wasn't right. The rounds weren't aimed to kill, they were driving the SEALs inward, forcing them toward the center of the compound. A kill zone. Blake realized it too late. A grenade clinked across the floor. Down. The explosion tore through the courtyard, sending debris and dust into the air. The concussion slammed Blake backward, his ears ringing. Through the haze, he saw Mendoza go down, not dead, but bleeding. "Medic," he shouted. Harris crawled over, dragging Mendoza behind a wall. "I got him, sir." Blake leaned around the corner, firing into the dust. He couldn't see their attackers, just shadows darting through the smoke. Whoever they were disciplined, fast, and coordinated. And then, over the sound of gunfire, came something worse. A voice. A woman's voice. Calm, cold, amplified through a nearby loudspeaker. "SEAL Team 9, she said softly, you were told not to come here. Blake froze. The voice was low and deliberate, with an accent he couldn't place. "Who is this?" he demanded. The woman laughed, not mocking, but sorrowful. "You shouldn't have come looking for Ghost Falcon. He's already dead." The gunfire ceased as suddenly as it had begun. The desert went silent again. Blake's men lowered their weapons, breathing heavily, eyes darting across the courtyard. The tension was unbearable, every shadow felt alive. Then the heavy gate at the north end creaked open. Out of the darkness, she appeared. A woman in desert fatigues, her face hidden beneath a scarf and hood. Her stride was slow, measured, completely fearless. In one hand, she carried a rifle lowered to her side. In the other, a worn set of dog tags that clinked softly as she walked. Even through the haze, Blake could see her eyes, cold, pale gray, glowing in the moonlight like steel. And in that instant, something in the air changed. Even the SEALs, the most battle-hardened men alive, instinctively lowered their rifles. Because she wasn't an enemy. She wasn't afraid, she was something else. Blake raised his weapon slightly, unsure whether to shoot or speak. "Identify yourself." She stopped just beyond the reach of the flames, her shadow stretching long across the sand. "My name doesn't matter," she said quietly. "But I was one of you." The team exchanged confused looks. Blake's stomach twisted. "That's impossible." Her gaze flicked to the bodies around her. "Ghost Falcon killed my unit. I killed him, but before he died, he told me you'd come." "Why?" Blake asked, voice tightening. "To finish what he started." She took another step forward, right into the open, where any bullet could have dropped her, and the SEALs' instinct screamed danger. Blake's finger tightened on the trigger. Then she said it, the words that froze him where he stood. "Lower your weapons," she whispered. "Because the real enemy isn't out there." She lifted her hand, and pointed at the sky. A sound began to build above them, low at first, then deafening. Engines. Not just one, a fleet. Blake looked up, and his blood ran cold. It wasn't air support, it was drones. Hundreds of them, all armed, all descending, and as their red targeting lasers flickered on, painting the SEALs in dots of crimson, he realized with horror what she'd just done. She had led them straight into the kill zone. The hum of the drones was like the sound of 1,000 hornets, thick and electric in the night air. They filled the sky, sleek, black machines with blinking red sensors that locked onto every SEAL in the compound. "Everyone take cover," Blake shouted, diving behind a wall as bullets and micro-missiles tore through the sand. The ground exploded, sending dust and debris into the air. The team scrambled for position, returning fire, but it was useless. The drones were too fast, too precise, too humanless. Harris yelled over the chaos, "They're targeting our biometrics. Someone fed them our profiles. Shut down your trackers." Blake barked. Now, each man ripped his wrist monitor off, smashing it against the concrete. Still, the drones didn't stop. Blake turned toward the woman, who stood in the open as if the death swirling around her meant nothing. The wind whipped her scarf aside, revealing her face, pale, dust-smeared, but unmistakably beautiful and cold as carved stone. He aimed his rifle at her again. "Who the hell are you?" She didn't flinch. "Call me Mira." "What did you do?" he growled. "I saved your lives," she said quietly. "By calling in a drone strike." Mendoza shouted from cover, blood still seeping through his bandage. "They're not here for you," she replied. "They're here for me." Before anyone could respond, she lifted her weapon and fired 3 precise shots into the air. 3 drones exploded in bursts of flame, crashing into the dunes. She moved like lightning, her aim flawless, calculated, every movement coldly efficient. Blake watched in stunned silence. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't bluffing. She fought like a SEAL, or better. Then something clicked in his memory. "Mira," he murmured. "Mira Dawson." Her eyes flicked toward him, a hint of recognition, quickly buried. "You're supposed to be dead," he said. "Most days, I wish that were true," she replied. The name hit everyone like a thunderclap. Mira Dawson, a legend among operators. A decorated SEAL who'd vanished 3 years ago after a mission in Syria went bad. The official story said her team was wiped out in an ambush. Blake had read the file. She'd been declared Kia. Ghost Falcon wasn't the enemy, Mira continued, firing again. 2 more drones fell. He was the bait. Someone high up wanted to bury everything my unit found in Syria. They used him. Then they used me. Harris ducked as a missile detonated nearby. "What are you talking about?" Mira reloaded with a calmness that made the others shiver. "You're part of a cleanup operation. They sent you here to die, just like they sent me. Bullshit, Mendoza spat. We're Navy SEALs, not pawns. Mira looked at him, expression unreadable. Then why do you think your comms went dark the second you breached the compound? Blake's stomach twisted. She was right. Command hadn't responded once since they'd entered. And now the drones, US drones, were targeting them. It made no sense. Unless, he pressed a hand to his comm. This is Commander Mercer, SEAL Team 9, requesting immediate evac and air cover. Do you copy? Only static. Then, a voice, cold and robotic, authorization revoked. Team 9 is compromised. Eliminate all assets. Blake's blood ran cold. Mendoza cursed. They just called us assets. A silence fell between explosions, and Blake looked at Mira again. Why should I believe you? She met his gaze steadily. Because if you don't, every one of you dies tonight. She tossed him a small device, a black cube about the size of a grenade. EMP charge. I built it, detonate it, and you get 5 minutes of air silence. That's all I can give you. Blake caught it, staring. And what about you? She shrugged. I'll cover your escape. He shook his head. You'll never make it. She smiled faintly. Wasn't planning to. Something in her eyes, weary, defiant, almost peaceful, made him hesitate. He saw the truth there. Mira wasn't lying. She'd been betrayed once, and now she was burning. What was left of her life to give them a chance? Team 9, Blake shouted, snapping out of it. On my mark, move to the southern wall. Harris, Mendoza, cover left flank. Mira, with me. They sprinted across the courtyard under a hail of gunfire. Drones swarmed lower, their targeting beams flickering like red lightning across the sand. Blake slid behind a broken pillar and slammed the EMP cube into the dirt. 3, 2, 1. He hit the trigger. A shockwave burst outward, a silent pulse that rippled through the air like a heatwave. Every drone above them sparked and dropped, smoke trailing behind them as they crashed one by one. The sky went dark. Go, Blake ordered. The team sprinted for the southern wall, scaling the rubble, escaping into the dunes beyond the compound. Behind them, Mira stayed behind the fire, picking off any remaining drones that twitched back to life. Come on, Blake shouted. We can cover you. She shook her head. If I leave, they'll follow. They'll track my signal, not yours. He froze halfway up the wall. Mira, that's suicide. She smiled sadly. No, Commander, that's justice. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, the soldier and the ghost. Then she turned away, walking back into the courtyard as the night filled again with the distant roar of approaching engines. Blake wanted to go after her. He wanted to drag her out of there. But he knew she was right. Move, he barked to his team. That's an order. They ran, into the endless desert, their silhouettes swallowed by moonlight and sand. Behind them, the sky erupted in fire. The second wave of drones hit the compound, detonating everything within. The explosion lit the dunes like daylight, and the shockwave rolled across the desert. Hours later, as dawn broke, the surviving SEALs huddled in the shadow of a ridge, battered and silent. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Blake stood apart from them, staring back toward the distant plume of fire. Harris limped up beside him. Sir, do you think she made it? Blake didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he said softly, she already did. They started walking toward the extraction point, the sun rising behind them, but Blake knew this mission wasn't over. Myra's last words echoed in his mind. They used me. Now they're using you. When they reached the rendezvous zone, a single black helicopter waited, no markings, no insignia. Too clean, too quiet. Mendoza frowned. That's not our ride. Blake stared at the aircraft. His instinct screamed danger. But before he could react, the pilot stepped out, a man in a suit, holding a tablet. Commander Mercer, he said smoothly. You've been reassigned. Debriefing in Washington. Blake's hand hovered near his rifle. In my team, they'll be taken care of, the man replied, smiling thinly. It wasn't a promise. It was a threat. Blake exchanged glances with his men, then looked back toward the horizon, where black smoke still twisted into the morning sky. Mira had sacrificed herself to expose something dark, something that reached far beyond Ghost Falcon, beyond any mission. And now, he realized, it was his turn. Because if they thought SEAL Team 9 would vanish quietly like she did, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The war wasn't over. It had just begun.